Hi, everyone. My name is Eric, and today we are celebrating a fantastic milestone from Canadian author P.D. Workman. Hi, Pam. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks.
It hasn't happened yet, but in a couple of days, on June the 16th of 2023, Pam will be publishing her 100th novel, or 100th book, I should say. As a brief introduction, Pam is a USA Today bestselling author, winner of several awards from the Library Services for Youth in Custody and the InD'tale magazine Crowned Heart Award. As I said, we're celebrating our 100th book, or we'll be celebrating our 100th book, but she writes all mystery, but different genres of mystery. So she has suspense and thrillers. She writes for young adults. She's done standalones. She's done very long series. She writes several subgenres of mystery, from light cozies to darker stories, gritty young adult, and mystery and suspense. She was a legal assistant and still sort of dabbles in it a little bit. And she lives and writes in Calgary. So first off, congrats on the 100th book. And if you don't mind, I'll start with the hard question. How is that even possible? So could you walk us through your average working day?
Yeah, sure. So I, as far as the writing itself goes, then I have 3 time blocks per day that I write. So I write in the morning, 7:30 or 8 o'clock, and then early afternoon, and then again between 6 and 8. So break it up. So then if you get tired, your brain kind of gets squeezed out after an hour and a half. So put it aside and work on some of the other aspects of business, and then come back to it again fresh. And so when I start a new book, I always start on the first of the month. So the first of every month, unless it's a Sunday, then I start writing the first draft of the new book. And depending on the length of books in the series, then I'll have a quota of between 5,000 and 6,000 words per day. And so I write 5,000 to 6,000 words per day, 6 days a week. And with that, then I'm generally finished the first draft on about the 19th of the month. And so then I have a week there to do the next draft, go through, restructure anything that needs to be done, and do a grammar check, do a text-to-speech read aloud, all of that kind of things to do a very detailed edit. And then it goes aside for 30 days. I'll review it again next month with fresh eyes when I barely remember the story anymore, and see if there's any plot holes or anything like that needs to be fixed up. And then it's usually 6 to 8 months before it's actually published. I'll go through a few different drafts and then send it off to my editor. And then after he's done his edits, then send it off to my advanced reader group, that kind of thing. And as soon as I'm done that second draft, so I finish the first draft on about the 19th, do my second draft 5 to 7 days, and then start planning and researching for the next month's book. So that's my usual process, and then start a new one again on the first. The Parks Pet series is a little bit different. It's a novella series, so they're quicker, shorter books. And so for those ones, then I'll write one a week. So, so 6 days for each of the books, and then, and that includes editing as well. So,
Wow.
So for that series, then I write 3 a month.
How do you stay motivated? So you're saying six days a week. It sounds like almost a 12-hour day. How do you stay motivated? Just keep going.
Well, I love to write and to create and interact with these new characters and that kind of thing, and do some interacting with readers and support my family and that sort of thing. If I stop, bad things could happen. I'd have to find another job.
Fair enough. I know as a writer myself, it's super important to have support from your family. Are they like, keep going, Pam, you can do it, mom?
Yeah,
Or are
they're
they
pretty
like, take a
good.
break, we'd like to spend some time with you?
Well, they know, and because I'm so regimented, they know which times of day I'm doing what and what times they can talk to me and spend time with me, and which times not. And we've got a big family whiteboard calendar on the main floor where people can see what everybody's doing on different days as well. So we've got that. But they'll ask, my son needs a ride somewhere. He'll kind of peek in the door, say, "So how are your words today? Do you need to do more words before you go out? Can I get you this afternoon?" So they kind of know that's what I'm doing. And when it's the first, then husband will say, "Oh, you must have started a new book today," or that kind of thing. And halfway through the month, are you still writing or are you editing? So they keep on track of it. My husband has been reading my books for a few years now. He was a non-reader when we got married, and so he basically had not read a book from the time he left high school until he read the first book that I published, which was probably a couple of years after I published. So probably 2015 or so was the first time that he had read a book in 35 years. And he loved it. And so he's been reading my books since then. And he hasn't read all of them. I write too fast for him, but but he keeps up with them, and he'll shout out at me, "Oh, so and so's doing this now, we're doing that now." Oh, okay. Sometimes he'll just start a conversation about what the character's doing, and it takes me a minute to figure out that, oh, he's talking about my character rather than a real person that he knows or saw on the internet.
On top of, like you said, the physical work of actually producing these books is the creativity. Again, as a writer myself, I know that I can get lost in my one world that I'm writing about, and creativity is draining sometimes, as the physical writing is just how to get from A to B to C. How do you keep up with the creativity of a book a month, essentially, or even more?
Um, I don't have a problem with ideas. I always have lots of ideas and lots of stuff on the back burner, that kind of thing. But I can get worn out on one series or on one type of fiction after a few months. Generally, I'll write 3 books in one series and then switch to another series and kind of alternate between, lighter and darker stuff. I found when I was doing like my medical kidnap series and that kind of thing, that I can't write characters with bad illnesses or disabilities 2 months in a row, because your brain believes what you tell it, right? It believes what you feed it. And so if you're writing a character that has these dreadful disabilities, then your brain thinks that you do. And so it can, I'll get, it's like a medical student reading the textbook and saying, "Oh, I've got that." It's like my body, I can't sleep, or have these new aches and pains or symptoms that I've never had before, that kind of thing, because I'm writing about this illness. So I found that I can't write that, or something that some of my series deal with abuse or that kind of thing, and that I have to be careful not to write too much about abuse 2 months in a row, or about depression 2 months in a row, or that kind of thing. Give my brain a break and switch over to a different series or a different topic in that series, or that kind of thing, so I don't burn myself out on something like that.
Well, you've touched on it already. Another part of writing is research. Now, I know some Canadian authors like Maureen Jennings, Iona Wishaw, very heavy on the research, probably do more research than writing, maybe wealth of knowledge. You've touched on so many different things, like you've mentioned medical stuff, illnesses. I think you've had like a high-tech series, so you would have had to research that. A lot of sensitive subjects that you would have had to have researched. So how much of that, that writing day is centered around research, and how important is it to get it right?
I think it's pretty important, and I do a lot of work to try to get those details right. And I do get feedback from readers saying, oh, she must have a medical background, or oh, she must have been a lawyer, or that kind of thing, or oh, she's a social worker, or whatever, because I've got the details right. So I do a good amount of research. I'll get deep down into something, and for a few weeks, then I'm living that one particular topic and then writing about it. And some stuff you forget and go back to later and go, oh yeah, I forgot I even knew that. But I keep a topical research folder on my computer, and it's got, I think, 150 subfolders right now on all of the different topics. So there's everything from medical stuff to legal stuff to like everything you can think of. I post them every now and then on one. I post screenshots of it every now and then on one of the discords that I hang out at, and people comment on the stuff that appears side by side because it's alphabetically sorted. But fantasy stuff and lore mixed with medical stuff and high tech and insects and just everything. So yeah.
The other aspect to writing, unfortunately, nowadays, in the golden days, we didn't have to, but nowadays we do. It's the marketing and the researching. And you've already sort of detailed it in the sense that you've shown us when your writing period is, and you've said that there's another period where you have to worry about the business. I just had a quote actually from Linwood Barkley last week. He said, Raymond Chandler never had to do Facebook. We do. So how much of the social media and the marketing takes up your day?
I have spent a lot of time on it. I've recently pulled back a little bit, but I was doing at least 2 blog posts and a video blog each week, plus my newsletter, as well as the writing, and then that's posted across all of the social media and stuff, and added in TikTok at the beginning of this year too. And I've pulled back on that a little bit now, where I'm going to try to focus more on the readers that I've got, and developing deeper relationships with the people who email me and that kind of thing, to try to narrow the focus a little bit and really focus on what those readers want and need, rather than trying to get everybody at once. So it's a bit of a change, and I've been making some behind the scene changes for that, but I have pulled back a little bit on some of the social media stuff and trying to focus more on the individuals than just shouting into the void and hoping somebody says, well, that sounds like an interesting book.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you too, that there does seem to be a lot of shouting from a lot of authors whose social media is basically just buy my book. So I like the approach that you're sort of taking of, cultivating an audience. Did you say?
Yeah. I've opened up a secret invitation only VIP club that I invite people in that email or that I see posting a lot in response to my newsletter or my Facebook or that kind of thing. And I've created a reader forum for them that's just opened up last week. So I'm just getting people over there to have a look and do some posting there now. Stuff like that that's not on somebody else's social media platform. It's on my own platform, so that I can control it and don't have to worry about if Facebook is going to only show my post to 3 people. I have these thousands of readers. Why do only 3 of them get to see it?
Yeah. Do you find with this new system, are you reaching an international market? Or is it mostly Canadians?
Hard to say at this point. I would say it's mostly US at this point. But I know I do have a few Canadians on there as well, and probably a couple UK. So which is the bulk of my, that's where the bulk of my readers are, is those 3. So just starting out small and adding one individual at a time.
What about Now, I've gotten this feedback, so I'm sure you've heard it far more than I have, that self-publishing isn't as good as traditionally published works. Um, do you have to deal with that a lot, or do you find that that's no longer feedback for you?
I don't get that very much. I sometimes get from people who are kind of out of the loop on indie publishing. Well, who published this? Who did you go through, or that kind of thing. And I have to explain to them that I'm an indie author. I publish it directly, and most of them seem okay with that. I don't get a lot of people who say that they only read trad pub or that kind of thing. I think we've pushed past some of those barriers now, more so than 10 years ago. It was a lot more divisive back then. I think it helps that there's a lot more hybrid writers right now who write in both worlds. So people can say, okay, well, if she can get trad published, why is she also indie publishing? And look at that a little bit as well.
Um, well, let's talk characters, because I know I've read a few places that you're one of those characters first, story sort of second. So let's talk about some of your characters.
Yeah, you bet.
Well, let's start with Sanctuary in a Stream, the ninth of your Pat Parks mystery. The main
Yep.
character, this one's a native girl for you living in Calgary.
Yep.
What could you tell us about Margie Papineau?
So Margie is Métis, and she has moved to Calgary from Winnipeg, and moved here with her teenage daughter Christina, and her grandfather also lives here, so she moved close to him, so she and Christina can walk over there to visit him. And she is a Calgary homicide officer. And in the very first book in the series, then she gets called out to a murder in Fish Creek Park. And so that's her first park mystery. And then the second one, it actually occurs outside of Calgary city limits in Glenville Ranch Provincial Park, which is a park that I helped to establish and open. So it's a near and dear to my heart. But because it's very similar in MO to the one that happened in Fish Creek Park, then she gets called out to that one too. And so then with 2 park murders under her belt, then she becomes the go-to person to call whenever there's a body found in a park in Calgary. So she's Detective Pat, because a lot of people don't have struggles with Patinode. And so she's Detective Pat, and she becomes Detective Parks Pat because she's the go-to person for that. So she's very close to her family, very close to her daughter and her grandfather. They're both really big parts of her life and feature in the stories as well. Her poor teenage daughter trying to settle into new school life in the big city right before the pandemic hits. So that's a tough struggle for her.
You'd call this one of your shorter series because it's only at book number 9. So how
Yeah.
does it, how would Pat be different than somebody like Auntie Clem? Or like they must have all their own voices in your head?
Yeah, they're all in there. And so the protagonist in the Auntie Clem's Bakery story is Erin Price, and unlike Margie, she didn't grow up with strong family connections. She grew up in foster care. Her parents died when she was quite young, and she ends up solving some stuff about their death later on in the series as well. And so she's coming from a very different place. She's a people pleaser, but she doesn't have those strong family roots. So going back to she inherits her Aunt Clementine's store, which she turns into the bakery. And so going back to her roots there, she doesn't have any family living there anymore, but this was a place that she spent as a little girl. And so now she's trying to settle down and get established, back to her her roots again, but she's a very different person than Margie. And then if you go to something like, Zachary Goldman, where he had a very traumatic childhood. I do tend to write a lot about foster kids. He was also a foster kid, but he's got PTSD, he's got learning disabilities, he has a very traumatic and abusive past, and an abusive marriage in the past as well. And so all of those things, he's a very different sort of person, and working on different sort of cases than Aaron or Margie. And then the spin-off from the Auntie Clem's Bakery series is Reg Rollins, Psychic Investigator. So Reg Rollins is a past foster sister of Aaron's, who shows up in book 6 in the Auntie Clem's Bakery series. And she was such a blast to write that I had to spin her off into her own series. And so, her background is a little bit different than Aaron's, even though they spent a couple of years together in foster care. But she has lots of voices in her head. And, she's been told she's crazy. She's been institutionalized, that kind of thing, and has spent years trying to suppress the voices, and finds out in the first book in the Reg Rollins series that she actually is psychic. She's been pretending to be a psychic to earn some money. Then she finds out she really is. And so she can hear ghosts, and she can hear what other people are thinking. And that just turns her whole world upside down.
Wow. I know when I'm writing, my characters live in my head. Do you ever have so many characters in your head, you're almost like, who said that?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be there's been times when I'll be talking to my mom or my husband or somebody and say, oh yeah, somebody was saying to me last week, such and such, or giving this advice or something like that, and then they stop and think, oh no, that wasn't a person. that wasn't one of my books. That was something I wrote last week. Oh yeah, it was really good advice, but actually it came from one of those voices in there.
I guess, do you have to try to temporarily purge them out of your head as you're writing somebody different, or do they always keep a little recess in your mind?
They're pretty separate. I don't tend to mix the characters or their voices at all. They live in different places. So I mean, I do have crossover books where characters from both series are in the books, but they both have their own individual voices and personalities. So it hasn't been too bad trying to keep them straight, make them behave.
So how are you celebrating the 100th book?
So I've got 2 celebrations coming up this weekend. One of them I'm actually doing a big in-person celebration at the Village Square Library here in Calgary on Saturday. And I don't do a lot of in-person stuff, but I thought this is something that should be celebrated with all of my people around me. So that's happening on Saturday. But since most of my readership is not in Calgary, then I'm also going to have an online celebration on Friday evening as well. So I have sent out some notices on those, and they're up on my website if people want to see them and participate.
Sorry, what is your website?
pdworkman.com.
And
both of those events are on the front page, so you can see them as soon as you land there.
What comes afterwards? A summer break? Or are you getting
Sure.
back to work?
Well, I have the next 9 books after that written already, but yeah, I do. I'm working on Reg Rollins right now, book number 21, and then will be. I think I'm on to Kenzie Kirsch next. I have to look at my planner and see who's coming up next. But yeah, then I will be starting on a different series for July, August, September, the next books that are coming out after these Parks Pad books are Auntie Clem's Bakery. So Wedding Cake Crush, A Waffle Death, and Murder Meringue Pie are the next 3 coming up after that. And then some Zachary Goldman. I have an idea right now for a children's, like a middle grade series. So I'm still tossing that around and figuring out. I've got lots of ideas for that one. So we'll see. I don't have it scheduled yet, but I'm thinking I might insert that into my schedule somewhere.
Wow. I think I had one last question for you, then I'll let you get back to writing.
Sounds good.
Okay, now I can't remember it, and it was a good one. I'm sorry. I have to apologize. After continuing all this, oh, sorry, Patterson. So we were talking beforehand, and even you doing your research about how many people have read or how many people have written 100 books, and you said you can only find a dozen. For me,
For Canadians.
For Canadians, yeah. I doubt it's much more bigger once you go past it. But for me, I was thinking James Patterson. So I had to look him up. And according to his bio, he's over 200. But most of us know that at this point, he's co-authoring most of the books that he writes. And I was also surprised to find out that he's been writing for almost 50 years, or being published writer for almost 50 years. Yourself, I found the earliest book 2013, so 10 years ago. So do you think you're going to give even James Patterson a run for his money?
I will. Yeah, I should have. Right now, I'm generally doing 14 per year. I actually did 17 last year. And if I do this middle grade series, then it could probably be 20 in a year. So yeah, another 8 years or so, and I should be celebrating my 200. But
wow.
one of my readers, I've been pumping this up on my newsletter list, and one of my readers wrote me back and said that he thought that the record, I don't remember if I think it was 3,000, that somebody holds a record for writing 3,000 books.
3,000 books?
And I was trying to calculate that out in my head and going, okay, let's say 30 years. That would still be 100 books a year. You'd have to be writing 2 per week for that. So, Anyway,
I don't
have
think
to be a little bit shorter than say my Between the Cracks series, which runs 150,000 words per book.
Well, I think maybe with technology, it's going to start cheating for us too, and they're going to do half the hard work. So that's not going to count, though.
Interesting to see where that's going to go, but yeah, I'm going to keep going.
So just for the record straight, every word is your own, right?
Yes, yeah, I write them. I do, I use tools like anybody else for grammar and editing, and I have found some uses for AI technology if you feed it a chapter and tell it to critique it or summarize it or things like that. Those kinds of tools can be very helpful, and to brainstorm, toss ideas back and forth and that kind of thing. There's some interesting uses, but no, as far as the writing itself, then yep, that's from here to the Keys.
Fantastic. So once again, congratulations. And this is a pleasure talking to you, Pam.
All right. Thanks, Eric.
And have fun this weekend.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.